Hello, hello. Welcome to cEDH Budget Brews. I'm Tim, and tonight we're continuing our series of beginner cEDH Meta Busters. We're talking about Tana and Timna Hermit Pod. Before we get started, please check out our Discord and our Patreon. Links in the description below. And if you like our content, please hit that like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out a lot. And I'm joined by my co-host, Brandon. Hi, Brandon.
Hi,
How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Time for that hard left transition. So, this is currently probably my favorite Tana and Timna deck. I love Tana and Timna. I played Blood Pod. I played Pet Cemetery. They were great back in the Hulk days. They haven't aged so well in this, 2022. I won't say Turbo Nos meta. I would say Dockside meta.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the tools that those decks use to interact, Dockside just kind of negated them. The Razaketh Reanimator stuff is really nice. It was a little bit better positioned, but the old Blood Pod with all the rule laws and all the null rods and it just struggled. And this deck answers that much more effectively. So, for those of you who don't know, Tana is 1 green, 1 red, 2 colorless, 2/2 with trample. And whenever Tana the Bloodsower deals combat damage to an opponent, you make that many 1/1 sapperlings. So, base stats, if she connects, she makes 2 1/1s. If you have a way to pump her, like say you're playing like Elishnorn or something, then she becomes a 4/4, and then she'll make 4 sapperlings. Alright? And then her partner is Timna, which is 1 black, 1 white, 1 colorless for another 2/2 with lifelink. And she has an ability of, at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you may pay X life, where X is the number of opponents that were dealt combat damage this turn. And if you do, you draw X cards. So if you deal damage to 3 opponents, you pay 3 life, you draw 3 cards. So Timna is a very good card advantage engine. Really good. Really, really good. And Tana helps you get a wide board so you can kind of keep your hand full. So at its base, Decos and Killstars did a really good job with this. In fact, Killstars has had a couple of high tournament finishes with this deck, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to go over it. It is pretty challenging to pilot, but once you kind of get it down, it will really reward you. Okay? So at its base, it's really kind of a standard kind of Sans Blue Hate Bears deck. You've got Archon of Emeria, Archon of Valor's Reach. You got your Aven Mind Sensors, your Dranniths. You got your Collector Oofs, your Dothi Voidwalkers. And then you have this really nice protection package, with Grand Abolisher. Op Agent kind of helps shut off tutors, but also kind of gives you some cards. And then you've got this really nice, package that really incentivizes you to swing wide. So you've got a new addition, Professional Facebreaker, which, much like Timna, for each opponent you deal damage to, you get 1 treasure. And then she has an ability where you can sack a treasure to exile the top card of your library and then draw a card till end and play that card till end of turn. So it helps you clear the top of your deck. Ragavan also makes treasures. And then you get Grim Hireling, which has the same effect as has kind of the same kind of setup as the Facebreaker and Timna, where for each opponent you deal damage to, you make 2 treasures. Alright? So you kind of got this nice grindy card advantage engine and mana advantage engine in the form of this creature base, as well as Hate Bears to kind of slow the game down for you and get the pieces you need. Also, Grim Hireling acts as onboard removal, because you can sack those, so it gives you something to do with those. That's what's nice about Grim Hireling and Facebreaker, is even if you're under a null rod, you can still use those treasures to get card advantage or get opposing threats off the board. All right. So that's kind of a nice thing to keep in mind. And then the deck also has like the ability to kind of execute a win off of Vivian and off of Birthing Pod. All right. So this is the old kind of blood pod pile where you sack Timna as a 3-drop with the ability, and then you chain up to a 4-drop. You get the Felidar Guardian. Felidar Guardian allows you to reset either Vivian or Pod, and then you sack the Felidar Guardian for a 5-drop. That 5-drop being Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide allows you to reanimate the Felidar Guardian, resetting the Pod or the Vivian, and then you sack the Felidar Guardian to get Kiki Jiki, and then Kiki Jiki comes into play, and you copy Karmic Guide, which reanimates the Felidar Guardian, and then when the Felidar Guardian comes into play, you flicker Kiki, resetting it, and then you make infinite Felidar Guardians and deal a bunch of combat damage and kill everybody. So that's like your main combo win. And I know that seems like it's a lot of steps, but what's nice is it's one card plus your commander.
Mm-hmm.
So while it's very slot intensive, it is not, it's very dense in the fact that you only need to acquire Vivian or Birthing Pod and have Timna in play, or another applicable 3-drop. If that doesn't quite get you there, you've also got Hermit Druid. So Hermit Druid just allows you to mill your entire library, because if you look at the lands, there's no basics. And then you can use things like Priest of the Fellrites. You just unearth it, and then you reanimate the same pile. Basically, you get the Karmic Guide back that gets the Felidar Guardian that blinks this to get the Kiki and blah, blah, blah. And now you kind of done it that way. You can also set up a thing where you can make a ton of treasures. It's not infinite, but it's a ton of treasures. And then you sack them all to like Mayhem Devil. You sack all the treasures to Mayhem Devil. So that's kind of another thing to keep in mind. You've got lots of reanimation spells. You got Mortem Lunge, Reanimate. You've got the Dread Return. So that way if you have like 3 dorks in play, you don't have to use the Priest of the Fellrites. You can just use the Dread Return, sack 3 creatures, and then do the same reanimation thing. Also, keep in mind that Kiki sacrifices those tokens. So those copies that you make will trigger, because they're sacrificed, off like for the Mayhem Devil. Because the Mayhem Devil reads that whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, deal a damage to any target. So even if you're post-combat, like say like you drew all this, and then you can play it out, you can still kill everybody with the Mayhem Devil. Just something to keep in mind. But anyway, just to kind of... Then another reanimation effect you have is the Savine's Wreck to kind of help you buy back your stuff. You got a really decent, really solid, actually, interaction suite in the form of like Abrupt Decay, Ass Trophy. You've got SWAT. You got a Orum's Chant. You got Silence. I mean, Shallow Grave is really nice because it gives you access to like an instant speed line where you can set all this up on top and go and pile over somebody, as long as you can get the Hermit Druid in the top of the graveyard. Because you can mill everybody and then do the thing. So like basically with this, you have Hermit on board, you self-mill, and then you shallow grave because you can kind of order your library. Yeah. And then you shallow grave the Felidar or the Karmic Guide into play, and you get the and you do it that way. So just kind of something to think about. It needs a little more setup, but it works. And then you've got a couple more animation. Same thing with Necromancy. Necromancy gives you another instant speed line. And then you just got the nice card draw with Sylvan Library. So the thing with this deck is that while it plays hate pairs and it can grind really hard, this just gives it the ability to punch really fast. And then as long as you can set up your pile with the Mayhem Devil, it doesn't matter when you go off because you don't have to deal combat damage. You can just assemble the pile and then the end step, you sack them all and then you just ping everybody to death.
But I do want to mention that, like, because this is a non-blue deck, it does use some cards that most decks don't, and that gives it a sort of charm that I think a lot of competitive decks kind of lack.
Yeah.
Like for instance, Toski. You rarely see Toski in competitive level. Um,
It's been showing up more and more. It's played in like Najila and some of the win conless stacks decks. I play it
mm,
in hipster stacks.
mm,
There is also one more pile that I did not mention that I do need to go over real quick.
yeah.
Uh so with the Mayhem Devil on board and one of your reanimation enchantments, so that's either the Animate Dead or the Necromancy, you can use Leon and Relic Warder to create infinite sacrifices and ping everybody to death. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss that.
Mm-hmm.
This deck just plays really well. It's very well rounded. It's got a nice curve. It has a lot of good answers. It does not have counter magic, which I like. Counter magic isn't overrated, but it's not always like
It's not the
it's
end all
not
be all.
it's not the end all be all the time. Let's put it that way. So like for example, if you tend to play in like more of a meta that doesn't like lend itself to playing a lot of blue, if you find yourself in pause as the only blue player, a lot of times you're the only one answering everything and you're bleeding out slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And playing a deck like this, where you don't have to counter everything, you just play what hate pieces are relevant and then jam it when the time comes. And if it doesn't work, you just grind until you get another jam it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of these silence effects that will help kind of buy you time. Like Ranger Captain is really nice. I mean, it tutors up a dork at its basement, but normally I'm going to tutor up Ragavan or Esper Sentinel with it. And now I have a silence on the stick, and then I got a bunch of reanimation effects. I've even done things where I've played this and I've sacked it for one opponent and then like shallow graved it back into play or necromancy back into play to do it again when I needed to for the next guy. I mean, that doesn't win me the game, but a lot of times you just need to not die.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think the Hermit is kind of a nice touch. And then Vivian was a really good addition because it'll gives you a way to birthing pod under your null rods, which has kind of always been historically a problem for pod decks, is that they want to play oof, but they also can't win under the oof. You know what I mean? So I would definitely recommend this. It could definitely take some getting used to. One thing to be wary with any stacks deck is to think about, it's not so much what you play now, it's more of what is that piece going to do 3 turns from now. Like, it might, you have to plan ahead a little bit and sequence pieces in order and learn how to read a table, learn how to, these types of decks do require you to know your opponent's decks because you're not reacting to them. You're playing stuff before they do things. Because if somebody casts an Adnaz, you can't put an Archon of Emeria into play in response. It just doesn't do it. You're gonna play it beforehand. Like, sure, you can op agent or Aven somebody like when they're tutoring, but that's only 2 cards in your 98. Like, so that is something to be aware of. But the deck does have a lot of layers and does work well. If you need a basic, like, once over for how the pod combo works with these commanders, I will link the original Metapod primer in the description with this, because Deco and Killstars are from cEDH Brazil, so their primer is in Portuguese for their Portuguese viewers. Also, if you are interested in some really high skill gameplay, check them out on Twitch. I'll link their Twitch channel as well. So, all right, man. I think that about covers it. I can't think of anything like egregious that I left out.
Also, I want to say that I love the fact that there's a lot of new cards that are widely being put into competitive decks.
Oh yeah,
That
this
doesn't
deck is,
often happen.
yeah, it's got Boseiju, it's got Aganjo, but anyway, with that, I think we'll go ahead and head out for the night. Again, if you have any questions, please leave them below. We'll leave links to everything in the description. And if you enjoy our content, please hit that like, share, subscribe, or check out our Patreon. Thank you. Bye.
See you next time.